Looks like we are now live. It is 11 a.m. I want to welcome everyone and thank you all for being here. Thank you to our speakers for taking the time to do this with us today. The meeting is being recorded, so those of you who are on the Zoom line, feel free to turn off your video and mute your microphone if you do not want to be included in any of the recorded aspects. There will be time after each speaker for some questions, and we're looking forward to what they have to share with us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Megan Gilbert. I'm the Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce of Eastern Connecticut. I would like to pass it first to Tony Sheridan, who is our President and CEO, for a few words of opening here.
Well, thank you, Megan, and thanks once again for keeping us all together as technology allows. It's interesting, we're regrettably getting kind of used to Zooming or whatever other FaceTiming and so on. Whatever other platforms we use, and these are incredible times, difficult times. I'd like to start by thanking our elected officials, having formerly been one. It's a very difficult task. It's really, you know, you have a lot of bosses out there that believe they should be able to control your life, and that's very difficult. And so. And then it's even complicated because of the fact you can't meet in person with people and so on and so forth. So thank you all for being here and for working on our behalf at the both the state level and at the local level. So we're good, Megan. Let's go.
Excellent, thanks. So I do want to thank today's sponsor, Charter Oak Federal Credit Union. That should be the logo you see on your screen. They are based in Waterford, and we do have a very quick video to share on their behalf. So bear with me for 1 second while we get that started.
Hi, I'm Brian Ornstein, President and CEO of Charter Oak. As our community begins to open up, it is our #1 priority to ensure our employees and members bank safely. From the moment you walk into any Charter Oak branch, all business will be performed with your safety in mind. A greeter will meet you at our entrance to monitor all branch capacity regulations. You will find enter and exit signs, directional signs, social distancing markers, and arrows on the floors and walls. Charter Oak tellers and MSRs can service all of your financial needs from behind plexiglass dividers. Our team and our members will be wearing face coverings at all times, and we will have disposable face coverings available for you if you need one. We will be cleaning our branches numerous times throughout the day, and we have installed hand sanitizer stations for your use in each branch. I want to assure you that protecting our members while still meeting your financial needs is our top priority. We will see you soon. Members bank safely.
So thank you again to Charter Oak. They've been a consistent sponsor of these town hall updates. I'd also like to extend a quick thank you to our annual sponsors, our regional benefactors. These are the companies that go above and beyond their traditional membership to allow us to host low cost and free events like this, which also wouldn't be possible without our speakers. So without further ado, I am honored to introduce our first speaker today, our first Selectman of Waterford, Rob Brule. Thank you for being here. Take it away.
Great, thank you, Megan. Thank you, Tony. It's nice to be here with all of you. Representatives Holly Cheeseman and Kathleen McCarty, thank you as well for all you do for our area. I'm here, to answer questions, but also just give you a kind of an update on the town of Waterford and where we've been since November in the election. I think some people, may forget that November 2019 was an election for this position. And I came into office November 19th. I was sworn in, I started, and jumped right into the budget cycle. So a $95 million budget was pretty much preliminarily going on, and I came in, and I had to meet with all the department heads and have a vision of where the town may be going. I was meeting daily with the superintendent of schools, Tom Giard, for over a month. And I'm giving you this background because when I first said, I was sworn in, None of us were expecting COVID to come in, but that never took away from kind of where I was going when I was elected. I was a second selectman for 5 years under Dan Stewart's leadership. The town was in relatively sound financial shape. The general fund balance was hovering around $15-16 million annually. So we were in a pretty good shape as a town. So I thank Dan and the previous administration. But when I came in, and I did know that people were concerned about taxes, spending. Waterford has always had Millstone, and Millstone is not the pink elephant in the room. It's actually a tremendous friend and business that we've had in town. 35% of our taxes are from Millstone. So we've had a very productive and close relationship with Millstone over the decades that they've been here. So that was a priority for me to make sure I started off on the right foot. I looked at our budget and made sure that we could afford to continue to provide services that we provide in town, all the while making sure taxpayers were respected. And so that was my priority when I first got in. I met with all the department heads. And for people out there, I think people don't know where I've kind of come from. They see me as a second selectman, but they don't realize that I was a chief operating officer of 2 very large companies in the state of Connecticut, one a nonprofit and one a for-profit. I specialized in brain injury rehabilitation, specialized in special services for developmentally disabled transitional students looking for employment. And with that, gave me kind of a perspective of how to, run a town, but actually not forget the business acumen that I picked up on. And running a municipality a little bit more like a business, goals, objectives for leaders, all the while looking at the mission of the town. It really provided me that baseline in December and January to really go into my budget season with a purpose, and that was 0% increase in the budget. I really think we need to, I think it's in good standing if we could look at our services and see other communities in the state of Connecticut and our DERG and see what we spend, how much we spend on services of more above and beyond those of other communities of like size. So what I did was I just came in trying to, reduce spending as where we could. And that was the priority that I had. And it shifted into a 0% increase on the general town side. I think it was a 2.1% increase on the Board of Ed side. And I think there were just limited budgets that were anything over 0%. So I really kind of came in knowing that taxes were something that I campaigned on, that I made, as a priority. And I also made a priority when I first came in November to communicate with the town, communicate with the residents as best I could. And that was just a matter of Facebook, trying to get on Facebook as best, as much as I could. And sometimes, I don't go back and forth with people on Facebook, but I will private message them and I'll give them answers. I'll provide them follow-up when needed. But I really thought Facebook was a good opportunity for me to start my, my 4-year term on a good note, communicating with people in this great town. And no offense to East Lyme, but I'm committed and convinced that Waterford is an amazing community. Diverse, huge. It's a very large town, as everyone knows. We encompass and circle around the city of New London. So we do a lot of shared services with New London. So we're very uniquely positioned in the region. And with that, I was just excited to kind of, move forward with the budget process, communicate on Facebook as best I could, keep people informed, and I did that. And then lo and behold, COVID-19 came up. And when COVID-19 came up, March 19th, I declared an emergency, state of emergency for the town of Waterford. I was pretty quick to do that. I was also pretty quick to, as you all know, or may not know, I shut down pretty much everything in town. I just knew it would give us the best chance. In my experience as a chief operating officer of a large companies in the healthcare field, I knew, that if you isolate it, if you shut things down, you have the best chance of things spreading. So I used my knowledge in the private sector to really handle COVID immediately. But I know there's going to be a lot of questions about COVID, how we related, how I made some decisions with the team that I had in place. I was in daily conversations with the superintendent of schools, with all of our department heads. In the midst of all this, in January and February, I hired a finance director, because what I forgot to tell you all at the beginning, I started my job with my current finance director resigning and taking a new position in another city. So when I went through the budget process, I had to do it on things that I knew and my knowledge, and reaching out to people that I could count on and trust. So I did not have a finance director through the initial process of the budget. Since then, we hired Kim Allen. Kim Allen's come in, so that was the first hire I made as the first selectman. My second hire was our emergency management director, because we live in a town with a nuclear power plant. We converted that position to a full-time position, and we hired Steve Sinagra from Groton, who was my second hire in an executive role, and that should help us tremendously. He already helped, because lo and behold, COVID was going, and we had emergency management director to educate the community, educate our team in town, and make sure that he was working in concert with the Board of Education, superintendent of schools, and myself and my team to make sure our community was safe through COVID. So all that stuff was going on behind the scenes, and all the while we never took our foot off the gas. We never stopped thinking about business development, economic development, impact on our small businesses. I had many conversations with the former first selectman in the town of Waterford, Mr. Sheridan himself. It's always nice to have people in town that have done the job that you've done. It's not an easy job, and it's not supposed to be easy. And I think it makes it a lot easier when you're surrounded with people that can give you some good feedback. So with that, businesses we reached out. Abby Pearsall, our planning director, and I worked tirelessly on reopening and opening businesses, keeping things safe for our community. I worked directly with Representative McCarty and Senator Formica on the nursing home situation that started initially in Waterford, and then stretched over to Representative Cheeseman's town. So we never kind of lost sight of public health, the safety of our residents. Waterford shut down, as I said, pretty early. We did incur about $179,000 in terms of COVID-related costs. And out of the $179,000, it does look like we're going to get 100% refunded back by the state and FEMA. So Kim Allen did an amazing job keeping track of everything from day one. All of our directors in town were keeping track of every single expenditure, every single thing that had to do with COVID. And that ultimately comes back to businesses and small businesses. And on Facebook, we made Facebook pledges. We went out there and said, please support your local businesses. It's been awful for so many small businesses in our region, as everyone knows, and Waterford was no different. We did everything we could to support locally, to take out, to buy takeout, and we did everything we could as soon as restaurants could even go outside. We were supporting local businesses and getting tents, converting parking lots, keeping things safe, getting ahead of it on how to keep these small businesses open and running. So with that, we never lost the sight of business development and economic development. We actually, Mago Point, we had a restaurant get approved down at Mago Point. We've had an office building down at Mago Point get approved for building, new construction. So we haven't stopped there. We're looking at the airport property in town still with the possibility of being developed, where we just had Hartford Health go in and looked at Toys R Us and rebuilt in Toys R Us parking lot. And it's all new construction going on there. 7 offices will be in there, about 70,000 square feet. It's taxable. People have asked, not a hospital. There are 7 offices in that building, so that's great for our town. And it's a great gateway into that area too. Obviously with Charter Oak, and it was great that they were in this. They were in the beginning of this show. But Charter Oak on one end, and now Hartford Health and their building on the other end of 85 is a really nice thing. and then hopefully it helps. Hopefully it helps the Crystal Mall, because that's the one thing, my former first selectman in town of Waterford and I have had some conversations about, and it's something that it's on the chamber's mind too. How do you support them? Other than that, business keeps going. Millstone was a great partner in terms of businesses. They did not elect to defer the 3-month. As a town, we said 3-month deferral for everyone. We operate a budget on 91.1% return rate. Obviously, we had a 91.4% return rate. So we do really well. We usually underestimate what our returns are going to be. In addition to that, ECS funding, we only receive about $350,000 a year, which makes us very unique in the region. It seems like a lot of money, but when it comes down to millions and millions of dollars that local communities are relying on ECS funding, and Representative McCarty can speak more to that. We're more of a fortunate situation in Waterford just because we haven't had that in the years. Financially, we're in pretty good shape. Bonding rating is very good. We just bonded out our project at the municipal complex, a $17 million municipal complex, to store all of our public works equipment indoors except for garbage trucks. So we're keeping our assets safer now in the elements. We're making sure that we make we're prioritizing employee safety. The mechanical area, we can service much more vehicles in town where we might not have to farm out our larger vehicles now. There's just some cost savings that we can look at. And I think down the road, it could be a regional resource as well for not only disaster relief, but also other regional aspects with surrounding communities as well. It is a large, large building. It's been a project that's been in town for about 20 years now. And to see that done, to see us moved into the new building, and now they're building the storage or the actual garage part of the complex is just amazing. The building committee has done an amazing job at keeping it on time, under budget. And right now, for the environmental aspect of that project, we did know that there was a plume underneath the building. And I think other leaders on this call know that. We're not shying away from it. We're taking the initiative to make sure we budget for cleanup, we budget for things, and we address this problem first and foremost with this project. So that $17 million bonding went through. So we're proud of that. And other than that, we're focusing in on capital projects. The Waterford Beach project is something with bathrooms. It was always under septic down at the beaches, but it was in a low-lying coastal plain. So all of our bathrooms and their septic tanks were in the coastal flooding plain. So we needed to remove all those or fill them, cap them to safely to take them offline. We did it, and thanks to the town of Waterford and the vision of the Board of Finance and the RTM, they said, yes, let's do this project. So we ran 1,600 feet of sewer line and conduit down to the beach to hook up our bathrooms to city sewer, city water, and to make sure everything else was taken care of responsibly, environmentally responsible. And that continues. So the second phase of the bathroom project is amphitheater, outdoor amphitheater as well. And that's something that we're working with, obviously, the town on for next phase of that. And I hope to do a fundraising campaign to help with that, to offset costs and to make sure that the taxpayer knows that we're not looking for anything, free. This is something that needs to be done and done responsibly. And we need to be able to afford things like this. And the arts, there's no better place than Waterford Beach and near Eugene O'Neill Theater. So other than that, I'll leave some stuff here for questions for later. I'll try to do the best I can to answer any questions that I do get. And if I don't have an answer, I'll just tell you and I'll get back to you. I just 5 months into the job, it's 6 months into the job. It's a lot of information, but I'm blessed. I'm lucky to be the first selectman in town of Waterford, and really thankful for the people who are around me. So thank you for the time today. I appreciate it. And I'll hand it over to you, Megan, or Tony. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. A lot of good updates. So at this time, if we have any questions for Rob, please go ahead and unmute yourself to ask, or we'll give you a few seconds to type in the chat bar. We'll give that some time if anyone has any questions at this point. Next up, we'll hear from Holly Cheeseman, and she will have time for questions as well.
And Megan, if people have questions later too, if they think of something, I'll stay on the call, if that helps.
I appreciate that. We'll give people time. At any point, feel free to enter them in the chat, and we'll read them off to our speakers. Or again, you can unmute yourself when it comes time. I do have a question. You mentioned shared services, and that's always something that we like to hear about and learn about from the regional chamber perspective. Would you mind sharing 1 or 2 examples of shared services that you feel like is a good split for the 2 or more agencies or municipalities that are involved?
Right. Yeah, no, I do. Thank you, Megan. I think shared services, I'm inheriting one, you know, the animal shelter. I think it's just a perfect example of regionalizing, you know, something that most communities just can't afford to go and build a $10 million animal shelter and then provide the air conditioning and the heating and so to regionalize that and get that done. And Mayor Passero and I are going to be having that grand opening. We wanted to do it live. We didn't want to do it virtual. So it's up, it's running. Mayor Passero and his team Brian has done a remarkable job over there. As you know, we had over $200,000 raised in Waterford. So that money was sent over to the city of New London, and they oversaw the construction of that project. It's right down the old Bates Woods Park, right near the New London High School. So located perfectly for our area of East Lyme, New London, and Waterford. So it worked out really, really well. So that was just one thing. I continue to talk to the mayor about regionalizing dispatch. It's something that's been talked about for years and years and years, and that's just something I'm going to continue to reach out to the mayor about. And I also think, you know, just mutual aid in general. People don't understand, you know, mutual aid as much as I do now. And that's just making sure that our emergency services provide services to our neighboring towns. So if East Lyme calls and they need mutual aid, we're there. Police, fire, and we make sure that we respond in ambulance. And I think we do that with New London. We had, you know, close to 250 calls of mutual aid for New London because they're partnering this with us. So I think making sure that we communicate, making sure that we look at the sewers and the infrastructure. Old Lyme tying into East Lyme, well, that impacts us. So I reached out to Tim Griswold, the first selectman of Old Lyme, to talk about, you know, capital projects, because eventually all of the 140 miles of piping underneath the ground needs to be taken care of, and it's very expensive. So just having conversations with other leaders like that, things that we can certainly regionalize on and shared services. Also with our youth and family services, we have a great system in place now and a great director in Danny Gorman, who reaches out to other communities as well. Finally, we reached out to Felix in New London, but the Spanish business owners initiative that we partnered with. Abby Pearsall, our planning director, partnered with Felix during COVID-19, and it was a great relationship. So I think we're just constantly looking at the needle and what we can share, what we can do together, what we can do with our partners. So I think that's a little bit few of the ideas and some of the things that we've talked about so far.
Excellent, thank you. I appreciate hearing about that kind of information. So Rob mentioned that he'll stay with us, so there will be more time for questions at the end.
Megan,
yes.
Megan, may I make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you. I just want to recognize our first selectman and thank him for mentioning all the projects that are taking place in Waterford. You'd never know that we were going through a pandemic with all that he has kept up with throughout this period, and particularly to thank him for all the safety measures that he took initially in keeping us all safe. It's a pleasure to work with him. But my question, Rob, to you, with all of the different projects that you you have mentioned. Could you just speak a little bit about the importance of helping our businesses and keeping more jobs here? And what do you think, how do you see that as far as bringing in new jobs to the town? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. I think when it comes down to, I've never changed. I think a solid education system is something that's your baseline for families. I think in times of COVID-19, we started learning more about families are so important to communities. They're your revenue, like they're your taxable revenue. They come in, they buy property, they spend their money. And if we can attract families, younger families, which we are now, we had more, as many people know, the housing market has taken off. I think they're looking at Waterford as a great education. They're looking at a coastal town that has business infrastructure in place. We did convert, and just to follow up on the business and the economic development part of this, I did change, as when I came in, I changed our planning director's significant roles and her primary roles from planning and building maintenance to economic development. Abby Pearsall had a great deal of experience in Madison, Connecticut, and also in Wyoming, where she was before this, in terms of economic development. So shifting some of her responsibilities by hiring and just reallocating funds, combining two positions into a building maintenance position in town, allowed me to have David Garside review and keep a track of all of our properties that the town owns, and let him worry about all that, because that was taking our planning director's time. Like the sinks and the bathrooms and the carpeting and the paintings and the furnaces, all that was a drain on her real strength, which is economic development. So we just shifted gears. We shifted her responsibilities over to that, Kathleen, and we just made a commitment to Abby working directly with all of the businesses. She's been out there reaching out to all the businesses. She went out there and saw all the plexiglass that was needed, all the drive-throughs, all the parking lots, all those phone calls. We did reach out to a national provider who's interested, one of the $400 million a year company in manufacturing. She did that. So these are things that are going on behind the scenes. That Mago Point development, the fishing pier was just the first start of a grant. The second phase was developing more properties down there. She took care of the Dollar, Rite Aid that went out of business. She went out and got Dollar General. So repurposing buildings, getting Tractor Supply Company into the old Kids R Us. That was her doing. So we're really looking at utilizing and repurposing, already open space that we have. And I think this has been a priority. So I will commend her, because I can't take any of that credit. It's her and her committee. And we do have a commission, Economic Development Commission in town as well. And they're becoming much more active with Abby as well. So
Right.
Thank you for the question, though.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. I won't take up any more time. Thank you.
It's a very good question, so thank you for that. Thank you, Rob, for your answer. At this time, it's my honor to introduce State Representative Holly Cheeseman, who is giving us our East Lyme update. As we notified folks yesterday, Mark Nickerson could not participate due to an unexpected conflict. So a special thank you to Holly for stepping in and for sharing some information today.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you all. I know Mark would have preferred to be here, so you've got me instead, and I will try and provide as comprehensive an update as possible. And obviously, if there are questions to which I don't have the answer, I'm happy to refer them to Mark or other department heads and relay the answers back to you. So again, much like Rob, East Lyme entered the budget season expecting one thing and then finding another. There were long and comprehensive discussions at both the Board of Ed and the town government level. And at the end, the Board of Finance and the town adopted a budget with a 0.17 mil increase. There was a $312,000 decrease in the town government budget, and the Board of Ed decreased their budget by about $827,000. Did I say pounds before? I'm living in the past here. Anyway, one of the things that the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance were committed to do in the Board of Ed budget were preserving the funds they'd allocated for technology. I think as we saw during the pandemic, where school was converted to that online remote learning, the ability for students to have access to the technology that allows them to learn and talk to their teachers is paramount. And even in relatively affluent communities like East Lyme, we have to accept that not everyone will have the same access to technology as everyone else. I think this is a huge issue for the state going forward, particularly as we look at children in underserved communities, but it was felt in East Lyme anyway that preserving that investment was vital. Like Waterford, we saw a town go from thriving and booming to everything, or so many things shut down overnight. I know I've had so many discussions with local business owners who were having record years. And then all of a sudden the rug was pulled out from under them. Wearing my other hat as executive director of the Children's Museum, we made a small profit last year and we were already $20,000 ahead of where we were at that point. And then we're faced with 4 months of no revenue. So I think all of our towns, but particularly those that have relatively limited commercial properties and zoning, have to be very cognizant of the fact that we need to help the businesses that are here survive and thrive. I know as restrictions were eased and restaurants and breweries were able to open outside, thanks to the governor's executive orders, our zoning department worked very closely with restaurants, with our breweries, with anyone who wanted to come up with a different way of finding that revenue stream. Just driving around downtown, I see some empty storefronts, and we need to restore those. People retiring, people opting not to continue their businesses. So that continues to be a concern because it is a thriving business community, is thriving small and medium-sized businesses that really drive the jobs and the revenue in the state of Connecticut. The town hall was closed, was recently opened for appointments, and now is open for walk-ins. Obviously, we're encouraging people, if they can do their business online or over the phone, to do so. But the tax collector is open, the zoning office is open. I spoke to our tax collector today. We ended the last fiscal year with a collection rate of 99.02%, which is pretty darn good, Mr. Brule. But anyway, tax bills have gone out. Again, they're encouraging people to mail in their payments or pay online. Again, thanks to a governor's executive order, East Lyme opted to give that 3-month deferral for property taxes. You were required to file a declaration with a tax collector. When I talked to John McCulloch, he said they'd only received a couple of dozen deferrals. So he's hoping that tax receipts will continue at the robust level, but one doesn't know. Going forward, some of the changes that were made in terms of recreation, although playgrounds, et cetera, were closed, they are now open again. Our beaches are open. We are limiting the number of out-of-town visitors who can visit the beaches, simply because the demand has been so huge with Rocky Neck, limiting the number of cars that can come in. The normal overflow would be the East Lyme beaches, and we just can't accommodate them and allow the social distancing required. We have one-way traffic on the boardwalk, if people haven't noticed, to encourage that social distancing. It still continues to be incredibly popular, no matter how early in the morning or, as long as there's light, people are walking the boardwalk. And increasingly, again, visiting our restaurants and our stores downtown. Where one of the issues, obviously, is the safe reopening of the schools. And I know Jeff Newton is working very hard. He has 5 subcommittees working on that. It's a challenge to plan for both in-person learning and the possibility of remote learning. But I know If anybody can do it, they're going to come up with a plan. And I hope as the science comes out, there was a great piece in the New Haven Register yesterday with Albert Coe, who's the epidemiologist from Yale, saying children are very safe from the virus. And we need more science that shows us how infectious they may be to the grown-ups. But I think it's key for all our communities to get those children physically back in school in a safe manner, but allows them to have an appropriate education that's developmentally sound, that's pedagogically sound, and allows them to succeed under the best possible circumstances. Some of the other updates, obviously one of the big items in town is the new police building. I know First Selectman Nickerson hopes to have a referendum either late July or sometime in August. This needs to be approved by the Board of Finance. I will add, I know people have had issues with the process, but one, if you ever had a chance to look at the police building in which our brave policemen and women are required to serve now, it has serious, serious issues. This was meant to be a temporary fix, and we're 10, 15 years down the road. Again, thanks to Dominion, we have the building, but in terms of public health, public safety, if we were to put in all of the improvements that were required, it is distinctly possible we would exceed the 50% threshold in terms of building in a flood zone, and we would have to raise it up and meet current building standards with regard to FEMA and the flood zones. And my final point with the police building, for anyone who is thinking about this, we have seen how important good ventilation, the ability to socially distance is as we're dealing with COVID-19. Our police are currently housed in a building that's 7,500 square feet, much of which is not usable because of health hazards and other environmental issues. We need to move them to a safer building. We need to move them to a building where they can spread out, where it has a more modern HVAC system, where the people who are serving and the people who are coming into the building can be as safe as possible. And I think that is a key consideration as people are talking about the police building. So I'm sure Mark could have been far more comprehensive. He has an in-depth knowledge of what's going on in town that I may not have. But again, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them if I can and refer them to the First Selectman and other town department heads if I cannot. And just on a personal note, we will be reopening the museum next Tuesday, July 14th, to members only to start with. And we're looking forward to having our bit of Niantic Main Street open for business again. And I thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today.
Excellent. Thank you, Holly, again, for stepping in and for giving us all of that information. It's very valuable to have that. At this time, if there are any questions, go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a microphone. If not, please feel free to enter it in the chat. We'll give people a second to type their questions if that's what they're going to do. I did also want to thank some of our regional benefactors who are on the line and have a vested interest in Waterford and East Lyme. I see Atlantic Broadband, again, our sponsor, Charter Oak Federal Credit Union. Dominion Energy is on the line, Liberty Bank, and Simon Conover Company. So thank you all for being here and for your continued support of the Chamber. We also have a representative from the Office of Senator Murphy. Brianna is here, so thank you for listening in. I don't see any questions popping up, so covered a lot of content.
Megan?
Yep.
It's Kathleen McCarty speaking again. I do have a question for Tony, if I may. As we talk about the new school plan going forward, the Adapt, Advance, Achieve, and we know, and Holly, Representative Cheeseman mentioned there are probably a hybrid plan as well as the overall directive. I'm wondering what type of interaction the chamber is having with the educational community, and if I can be of any assistance, I'm there for you.
Well, we're always available to help. I mean, education is not kind of in our mission statement in a direct manner. Of course, the business community wants and needs good schools because, quite frankly, without a population of well-educated kids, we're all going to lose out. So I do talk with the superintendent periodically on various matters. If things were normal, we'd have the superintendents, which we've always done in the past. We'd have had them engaged in this conversation today because, quite frankly, as you all know, not only is the school budget as equal or greater than the general government budget, but it's also by far more critical. I know some people would criticize me for that statement because the next time they hit a pothole, but quite frankly, the schools are critical. I mean, they're critical to all of our futures. And I just, while I have the floor, or the screen maybe, I want to thank those families who are, happen to have two sons who are both teachers, and but they were teaching their classes and teaching their kids, which is almost an impossible task for any family. And I know that our people the nurses and doctors who are, on the front line, are playing an incredibly important role, but the families who are really trying to keep the family together can't be forgotten in this whole process. So,
well, Tony, that's why I brought the question up, because there's been discussion, and we look at our early child care programs and trying to get the percentage back up again so that our parents can get back into the workforce. This is going to be a very high priority, and I think it's going to require a lot of interaction with the business community and the educational community. So that's why I brought it up, because we're already looking and saying that this is going to be an enormous challenge. And the same with, as you just pointed out, I will say one positive for as far as the State Department of Education, there will be a new Connecticut Learning Hub which will have model curriculum for the online learning in the event that there's a surge and we have to have our children at home learning. So, but in the meantime, I think it's imperative that we try to work hand in hand, and I may talk to you again offline at some point to see if we can't do in that direction.
I have a question for both you, Kathleen, and Holly, and perhaps Rob as well. The state parks are held at a 50% capacity rate at the moment, and understandably so. But what's a little frustrating to people is when they come perhaps from Hartford all the way down to Harkness, and they have to turn around, or they try and sneak into one of the other beaches. I don't blame them. I mean, perhaps the sneak is the wrong word to use here, but we have 96 additional acres across the street from Harkness's main entrance, the Barricade Nursery, and the state is required to mow a fire path around the outer perimeter of that property. It used to be a farm, and why can't we do the mowing, take a couple of hours, and open it up for people to at least go for a walk or a hike? I mean, it seems like it's a total wasted resource at a time when families really need to get out and get exercise and not make a trip in vain. So, I mean, maybe both of you could look into that and see if that's possible. I mean, it seems like a shame to have it sit there and not be used, at least for hiking trails.
Sure, we can check. So who owns it, Tony? Is it owned by the town of Waterford or is it owned by the state?
The state of Connecticut owns it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Right. And they're required to do the fire, to mow the fire wall, fire, what do you call it? Fire road.
Fire break or whatever.
Fire break, yeah. They're required to do that anyway. So I put out a notice last year, and this is before the pandemic, for a walk through the Harkness You Don't Know. It is part of Harkness now. And I don't know, Megan, you might remember, but at least 100 people showed up for the hike. So there's a keen interest in outdoor activities right now. And it seems to me it's almost unfair to leave it sitting there. And then I'll go one step further, if you don't mind. The camp Harkness, and I know there are restrictions that it's for families with special needs, children and family members, but the perimeter of Camp Harkness is also used as a hiking area. And they put these really ugly signs, keep out or whatever they say. And this is the time to be a little bit flexible with the rules so that we give everybody an opportunity to really get out and enjoy themselves and you know, really get the important exercise that we all need.
Well, thank you for those suggestions, Tony. And I will work with Selectman Brule and make some calls to Deep and see if there's any possibility if those can be worked out. We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, and just so you know, I understand staying away from the Rogers House and the center of campus because there are residents there, and I think we all need to honor that. But I'm talking about the perimeter road, right, so that people can walk, and to add a little bit of insult to injury, and I'm the one to blame for this, because when I was first selectman, we had an opportunity to put a sidewalk along that road, and for reasons I cannot remember, it was never put in. But so you really take your life in your hands by walking along that state highway. Anyway, those are my complaints for the day. They're not really complaints, they're requests.
Suggestions, yes.
Suggestions, there you go. Anyway, are there other questions? I mean, this is a great opportunity to have both of you, our state representatives, and Rob, the first selectman here. I guess you're all doing such a great job. No one has questions.
Thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you to our speakers and again to our sponsor for being here. They are very available, so I'm grateful for that. If you do have questions, if anything prompted today some interest in a new topic, this is a great chance to get involved and to help make your community better. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to any of them who are on the line today or any of our elected officials. I do think we're lucky in southeastern Connecticut to have a very engaged group of people who are boots on the ground, so to speak, and very supportive of the business community above all else from the chamber's perspective. We're grateful for that. So with that, I will say thank you again to our speakers. Thank you to everyone who's on the line and to our sponsors. And a special shout out to those of you who chose to contribute to the chamber instead of taking the free ticket. We are absolutely happy to put out programs like this for free, but your support means more now than you know to support our operations and continuing on and putting on strong programs like this. So thank you all of you for throwing in that extra couple of dollars. So we appreciate that. And with that, we will wrap this up. The recording will be available. It was broadcast live to our Facebook page. If you missed anything, go ahead and watch it there. And we will wrap up and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.